don't know how much you know about tarot, but it's got a very bad rep. It's still got a very bad rep. And it's totally unjustified, because most of the people who are saying it's the devil's picture book or whatever have never even seen a bloody deck. And if I swear, you'll have to excuse me, it's something I'm really passionate about. And these idiots who come along, I've been attacked, not physically, but you know, people come up and say, "You're doing the devil's work." And I was doing this in Battersea, I was reading, and I got up, and the person backed off. You've never seen anyone move so fast. I think she thought I would hex her or something. But I got into the tarot after I watched a program on it, on a black and white TV in 1971, it was like that, you know. And my husband, who is now an ex-husband, he was a proper husband at that stage, he said, why don't you buy a deck of tarot? You're into that sort of thing, because he knew that I'd tried reading at my school. And I said, no, they're really ugly. No, don't like them at all. Forget it. And then 6 months later, I was like, I've got to have a pack of tarot cards. And we'd both come from Africa. I knew nothing about where to buy these sorts of things, so I went to Harrods. Not really the place to buy tarot cards. And I bought the Swiss IJJ or 1JJ or whatever it is. I hated them. Couldn't use them, hated the book. So I decided I would just start painting my own deck. And it was a sort of medieval style. I looked up carpets and illuminations, and I made this fairly bad deck, which I actually sold to Kaplan, Stuart Kaplan of, US Games, eventually, and I bought a dishwasher instead. So I'd done these, they were usable. Then I got a couple of other decks that were good. The Aquarian Tarot I absolutely loved, and I used that for a while. I started learning. There's a book called The Tarot and You by Richard Roberts, which they reprinted in paperback. And that taught me how to read the images, because before that I was trying to learn from a book, which is a total waste of time. So I learned to read what the images is. If there's somebody sitting there like this, it's probably because they're trying to work out what to do with their lives. But it isn't necessarily so. You have to read the image that presents and the client that presents, because what it says on one day isn't going to say the same thing again. So I started reading for people I didn't know, and I found it was much easier. I can't read for myself at all. I'm hopeless, because I'm far too caught up with my own stuff. So if they say love, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get what I want. You know, it doesn't work. And I remember doing a reading very early in my tarot life. I worked for BP for about 11, 12 years. And I did a reading for this woman, and she was very plain and, you know, sort of creamy hair and about as insipid as you could get. And the cards were like love, marriage, babies. And I thought, oh God. Oh God, all right. So I told her this. And about a year later, I heard that she was getting married. And I went up to her and I said, was I right? And she said, yeah, I didn't want to tell you, but you were. Oh, okay. But that was when I had my cards. You know, reading it with the Aquarian was fine. And I did that for a while. And then one evening I was doodling. Now basically I'm an artist. And always wanted to be an artist. But really struggled. I mean, it's very daunting if you feel as though you're a second-rate talent and all you can do is sort of pictures that don't say, this is a vase, you know. I was drawing people, and I was drawing sort of symbolic people. And it really wasn't easy to find other people doing the same. The symbolists did, but I wasn't on their level. So one evening I was doodling, and I looked down, and I had actually drawn the Fool. Very different Fool, and I can't can't see him. I'll show him to you later. But he was quite mad, you know, off his head. You look at his eyes and I was like, oh my God, he's fantastic. So I painted him up and he worked. So I carried on and I went on to the magician. And after about 2-3 years, I had the majors. But I also was very, very depressed. I was actually clinically depressed at the time. So I can't actually put it together in my head. How did I carry on painting when I was like, ooh? But I did. I had huge problems with the mother, the empress. Huge problems with the devil. I think I had 3 or 4 different versions of the devil. And I really couldn't paint the world at all. I think the world actually got done after I finished. So I kept on painting them every now and again. And everyone came along and said, you know, you should paint the miners. And I was like, that's 56 more pictures, forget it. And I think I must have been feeling a bit better. And after about 2 years, I thought I could probably manage the 56 cards now. So I started, and I had these teeny weeny little thumbnails that I would draw. And if I figured that the picture looked okay, I'd draw them up full size. And they worked. They were really great. So I took them off to Stuart Kaplan, together with the one that I sold him. He wanted to put fig leaves on all the men and sell them in Disneyland and give me 0.5% royalties. And I thought about it, and I thought, I don't think this is a good deal, you know. Besides, I just didn't like him. So I just sat on them. And I did my readings. I went to Holborn Photocopier place. I don't even know if it still exists, but I got a full photocopy set of the deck. And I remember taking the death card in. And he would put them all, you know, 4 cards on a platen and then run it. And I took the death card and he was like, is this going to be okay for the photocopier? So I said, yeah, it's not death. Puts it on the platen. Photocopier just went, that was it. So I had to go back once he got it going again. So there are all these lovely stories about it. But of course, once I had the deck, I started using it. And that's when I did this reading for the pale, anemic person who's probably got 15 children. And that was it for a long time. I would just use them, but as an amateur, I never charged. But I knew that they worked because they're so accurate. And they're so easy to read, well, at least I thought they were easy to read. I think other people do as well, but they're slightly odd in that some of them really do look like aliens. And so I had these people saying, why have they got no mouths? Well, because I never paint mouths. And then gradually I started putting the mouths in. I think it was the High Priestess particularly did not have a mouth for years. She's barely got a mouth now, but she welcomes you in, and she's one of the priestesses, the ancient priestesses, and you know it. So there's a sort of long lineage going back. I remember I took the cards to America. I don't remember when I went. Must have been much later, say 88 or so. I took the cards to America, and I met up with this woman who was I can't remember what she called herself, but she's one of those ones who enrolls you as a lesbian. And she was like, well, you don't really know what you are sexually, do you? So, not really, but I'll think about it. And I thought about it all night, and the next morning I said, no, I'm straight. Thanks for the offer, but no, I'm straight. But she took me to her dream group, and there was a woman who, I didn't know at the time, but her background is Greek. And I'm thinking, I know this woman. I don't know where I know her from, but I know it. I know her. And I said this to my friend, and she said, well, you better go and talk to her, because she's saying the same thing about you. So we had a chat, and we realized that most of us had been, and I have a slight difficulty with this, most of us had been in Atlantis. And so that lineage is still there. I've met quite a few people now who talk about Atlantis, and there's another one as well. What's the other big island that isn't Atlantis? Sorry? Yeah. And I don't know about Lemuria at all. I just felt there was something there, and it felt like Atlantis. Who knows? So I know the cards have got something in there that's very deep, but archetypal, you know. You can explain it any way you like. The one thing they're not is they're not evil. And the idiots who say they are idiots. So what happened after that? I think after that I started pulling myself together. I was still very scattered, and I was painting very big paintings. The tarot obviously about that big. And then I met a tutor, and he said, no, you can paint little things, and then you frame them. So the next thing I painted was that big, and after that it was 5 foot. And they were incredible, those paintings, because they had beings in them that didn't seem to be in our dimension at all. If you look at them, they look like they're straight, but they look like they're coming in like that. And I still am a huge fan of C.S. Lewis, and he has 3 sci-fi books. And he talks about spirits of planets who come in like that. So I figured that they were my brain's gone dead. They're the spirits of planets. So I painted them for an age, and after a while the power went out of them. I painted them for about 6-7 years, and the power went out of them, so I had to stop. So instead I took a BA in Fine Art, and that took me to the beginning of this century. So with my BA I decided I'd give up my horrible 9-to-5 job, and I couldn't have done that before because I was much too scared. They get you by the short and curlies with these bloody paychecks at the end of the month. Don't do it. So I I did. I handed my resignation, and then I got scared again. And then they made my boss redundant. I was like, yes, now. So this time oh, that's right. And I also had met a whole group of druids. Gone down to stay in a big yurt, and decided that if most of them were nuts, but they managed to live fine on no money at all, I didn't have to be too scared. I'd hand in my notice and I'd do whatever. So I handed my notice in, and 3 months later, November 2002 I think it was, there I was, terrified out of my wits. I was still terrified, but I hadn't run out of money yet. And I went to the druid group, Samhain, and there was Carr-Gomm with his Druid Craft Tarot. So in fear and trembling I showed him these cards, and he said, I can give you a few names and addresses, you know, and I can also let you have a draft proposal. Because bear in mind, these were still my photocopies. I said, yes, please. So he sent me the draft proposal, and he actually really liked the cards. He sent me the draft proposal, he sent me the names, and I spent Christmas that year writing up a proposal. I sent it in at the end of January 2003, and they rang me up the next day and said, can you bring the cards in? So I was like, the originals they wanted. I was like, really? I still think that was quite miraculous, because they don't do that normally. They must have probably been looking for something. The London Book Fair was coming up in, I think, March, April, so they may have wanted something. They saw the originals, it was a fantastic meeting, and they took them on. So there I was, on the way to becoming a published author. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be a published tarot author, I'd better start reading professionally. So I tried, and the first readings I did for other readers, and I was told by this woman, I don't know what the hell you're doing, but it's not tarot reading. It's sort of psychological, isn't it? I was like, oh, really? well, it's the only way I can read, really. And then I started reading for other tarot readers, and they said, no, you're reading tarot. So it was fine, you know. At the same time as I had started sending in all this stuff and doing my proposal and becoming a published author, I started painting these decks, this deck. Oh, well. This one is the second card in the deck. That's the Divine Feminine, which you probably can't see. And that came out of a talk on angels. I don't do angels. I can't stand the angel cards on the market. They make me feel ill. So I went to this talk on angels, and at the end of it, I said to the guy, you know, it was a lovely talk. I love what you're doing. He totally changed his life. But why are you using these ghastly bloody cards? I said, someone should paint a deck of angels as they really are. That they're like 30, 40 foot high, and if you encountered one, you'd be shaking for a week. That was a friend of mine who had actually encountered an angel. I haven't. And I thought, I've already painted a deck. Maybe I should be the one to paint this angel deck. So I said this, and he said, yeah, go for it. Next morning I woke up and I thought, well, why not? So I started painting. And all these strange images came out. The first one that came out was the sun. So I was obviously not painting an angel deck. I was painting a Deva deck. Any one of you know anything about Devas? Heard about them? No? Okay, so Devas are the invisible energies in the universe. And I see them as the blueprints of creation, which is why I call them the Devas of creation. They're all around us. I mean, they're probably sitting there and thinking, what is she on? Oh, well, it'll keep her happy for a while. They're very intelligent, highly intelligent, far more intelligent than we are. They have a very, very funny sense of humor, very dry, sometimes very off sense of humor, for us anyway. You know, I can remember this story about this woman. She wanted a partner, and she wanted to manifest this partner, so she did all the bits, you know, the exercises about how to manifest your partner, and she neglected to say that it had to be male. So she got a female. And that's the sort of sense of humor. It's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have been that. I never did that, but, I mean, I didn't think. The interesting thing is, I never thought I was intuitive at all. Even though the cards are called the Intuitive Tarot, that came from someone else. There's a guy here who runs workshops for doing what you love. And I rang him up. I knew him vaguely, and I rang him up and I said, I need some help with titling this deck. This was before I even sent in the... I'm sorry this is bitty because I haven't prepared it. This is just me talking off the top of my head. I need some help with entitling this deck, because what I'd been talking about was the Gateway Tarot with the deck. And he said, okay, I can get you to talk to my friend who is a publishing consultant. And she gave me half an hour, and she said, well, how did you paint these cards? And I said, well, they sort of appeared. I didn't seem to have too much to do with it. I was drawing the Fool, and he appeared on my desk, my pad, and most of them happened like that. The minors were more, you know, with my little thumbnails, but the majors seemed to appear almost by accident, and the Devas as well. So she said, well, actually, it sounds like you create intuitively. Why don't you call it the Intuitive Tarot? I looked it up online. There wasn't an Intuitive Tarot. There's a book called The Intuitive Tarot, I think, or The Intuitive Tarot, something like that, but I figured no, it was fine. So that's why it's called The Intuitive Tarot. But then I realized that I am completely intuitive. What we think of as intuition, where all these messages come through, that's more psychic stuff. I'm not like that. I figure it out with my brain, and then I feel it. That doesn't feel right. And that's what I figure intuition is. But it's individual. It doesn't really matter as long as you can feel something. We're not talking about emotional feeling. We're talking about gut feeling. And I think so many businessmen and women work like that. They just don't say they do, because otherwise they'd be docked, pay thrown out. Intuition is still a bad word. Stupid people. So there I was. Okay, I had the Intuitive Tarot coming out in about 2004. It was published. And I had this deck of the Deva cards. And the Devas made all the difference, oddly. Well, yes, of course the Tarot made a difference. But the Devas made a difference because of what they were. Like that one that I showed you. I've never painted anything like that. It was sort of, that was an illuminated being. So instead of thinking of myself as this little sort of ant running around spitting poison at everybody, which I had been told I did, I had to accept that I was pulling something in that was far greater than me. And the Devas themselves, as I say, they have very definite personalities, very definitely created beings on a much higher level than we are. So I started using those as well for readings, but also talking to them, going into the land. I went down to Box Hill once. This was well before I painted the Devas, and said something out loud, and the wind blew up, and I was like, okay, let's try it again. So I said something else, and the wind blew up a bit more, and I realized that the wind was talking to me. It's conscious. I'm very much a learner on this. I'm not very good at it, but everybody can do it. It's about consciousness, and I'll probably be boring you about consciousness in a while, but the Devas are definitely conscious. We're on a very limited level of consciousness. We're not the top dogs in the universe. And the Devas showed me that, because they are very definitely entities in their own right. And using them together with the Tarot, which is, they're archetypes, so they're more us, they're more human. The Devas are not human. So it's actually quite interesting. You get these different levels of beings coming in. So I worked with them for quite a long time, and I was reading here, and in 2013, I think, 2014, my brother and another friend were talking about going to Europe in trucks, and I thought, do I have to be here anymore? I don't, because I'd given up my work. I mean, I was still reading, but I don't have to be in London anymore. Where would I like to be? And I got this vision of a house on a hill with bougainvillea and a beautiful view. So I thought, well, where would that be? Bougainvillea, Spain, don't want Spain, Italy. Okay. So I had this image for about 6 months, and then I thought maybe I better actually do something about it. So I booked a ticket to Italy, to this place where I'd seen, that they were advertising houses. So I went to Italy. The stock there, housing stock, is expensive and not very nice. So forget it. I'd seen a house in France. I went to France, saw that. I hadn't sold my house, so I couldn't put an offer on this house. And it sort of went into abeyance, and then in May 2016, I saw this house that I bought. It is the most beautiful house. It's old, it's stone. It had cellars that I could use for my art, and it was in my price range. So I actually flew out. As soon as I saw the photos, I booked a ticket and I flew out and I put an offer on it. That's manifestation. The sort of image that you get. You don't have to sit there and say, hey God, please send my house, because I didn't do that. But the house I got was what I had in my mind. It did take me about 7 months to find it, but I found it. And I've heard lots of stories from other expats, the messes they'd made, the being cheated, etc., etc. But I bought from somebody in the commune, which is a government thing. And he has been an angel for me. I ring him up and I say, my ID card is actually wrong. And he'll come along and he'll pick it up and he'll say, okay, we'll sort it out for you. Come get it on Friday. Incredible man. So I'll leave him my house because I bought it from him and I want him to have it back. Free.
In terms of reading tarot, you're saying intuitively, that's how I try to interpret it for myself. I find that much easier than just restoring all this information because it changes on the person.
Exactly.
How well is that received when you do professional readings? I'm just with my friends and family and my husband when I do the readings. I haven't got enough courage to go out there because I worry that the intuitive side will be judged and everyone will expect you to have this flawless, endless knowledge, like you're just reciting the cards perfectly by their general, noted meaning.
No, I think people
received well.
Yeah, the people are much kinder. The trouble is that they sit you on the pedestal and you're supposed to know, but the tarot really do work.
Yes, that's how I feel. It becomes intuitive. I just worry how people on a professional scale will see that as, oh, she's just fogging with her intuition or whatever. But
no, that's what they want.
That's why I thought, okay.
The worst readings I've ever had are from psychics.
Oh, wow.
Without cards, you see. It's wonderful having the cards as an intermediary.
Yeah.
And my latest deck has got a very different voice from the intuitive tarot, but they have very specific voices, and this one is still phenomenal. Well, both the intuitive tarots are phenomenal for readings. You have to trust.
Yeah.
You just waffle, and then it'll mean something.
Yes. Agree. Thank you so much.
Don't take that as an advert. Thank you.